Welcome to the Roanoker Presents From Print to Podcast, the Retirement Series, a spin-off podcast series by our sister publication, Retire VA. This new podcast is perfect for those navigating the labyrinth of retirement living in Virginia's Blue Ridge. In this exciting extension of our podcast endeavors, we aim to provide insight, guidance, and wisdom for individuals at various stages of retirement planning. Whether you're on the verge of retirement, actively embracing this phase of life, or considering the prospects, Retire VA is tailored for you. Today's episode shines a spotlight on aging in place. It's a topic close to the hearts of many, as it speaks to the desire to maintain independence and comfort in one's own home during the golden years. It's a discussion intended for those contemplating their living arrangements as they advance through retirement, or for listeners in the midst of helping their relatives and friends with questions about planning for their own golden years. Our exploration will be guided by key questions, shedding light on the services provided by Nexus Homecare, the distinctions between home care and home health, visualizing what aging in place truly means, planning for this phase of life, financial considerations, the benefits it offers, and so much more. So, whether you're looking for practical advice, considering options for yourself or loved ones, or simply intrigued by the concept of aging in place, our episode today aims to offer valuable insights and thought-provoking discussions. Let's embark on this journey together as we unravel the facets of retirement living, starting with our focus today on aging in place, sponsored by Nexus Homecare. I'm so pleased to welcome owner Tammy Mckee for being part of our very first special retirement series episode. Let's talk a little bit about Nexus Homecare. What does your business do for listeners?
So Nexus Homecare is a personal care company. We're located in Salem, Virginia, and we offer services that really focus on the activities of daily living. And what that means is all of the activities that you do when you wake up in the morning, the bathing, dressing, getting ready for your day, oral care, it can be nail care, any of those things, medication reminders, meal prep, those sorts of things in order to help someone stay at home and be able to thrive in their home environment.
Things that we probably don't think about. We just take advantage of the fact
Exactly.
that we can do them.
Yes.
And then suddenly we, might have some trouble.
And it can be age-related or it can be injury-related.
Right.
Or you've had surgery, that kind of thing. So it can really affect you at any aspect of your life.
Yeah, and I love this topic. So my mom is considering her retirement. She's getting ready to plan, and so she's putting all these things in place. And so this sounds like a great option for her to consider when she reaches that stage where she might need some help there.
Sure.
So I'm curious about, you had mentioned when we talked before we got started, the difference between home care and home health. So do you mind explaining the difference between that?
Yes, and that is a big misunderstanding for a lot of people. So home health is more skilled nursing care. It can be physical therapy, occupational health. It can be you've had a surgery or an illness and you have to have medications at home, pain monitored at home and managed. You're in recovery for something. And it can even lead into hospice care, which is more of a skilled health relation. Home care focuses more on the daily support. Again, those basic living skills that you can no longer do for yourself. So getting up, getting dressed, changing your bed linens, doing laundry, light housekeeping, the supportive things that you need in addition to possibly skilled nursing. And we work in conjunction with a lot of companies who are delivering that aspect of care. And coupled with ours, you can stay at home and age in place through the duration of your life.
I'm kind of curious. I love the collaboration that you're working with other people to make the whole, your whole life of every facet of what it is addressed.
Takes a village.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, we didn't necessarily talk about this, but what was your inspiration behind Nexus Homecare? Why were you so passionate about this project turned business?
Well, that's a funny story. So I wasn't, quite honestly, at first. I never thought I would end up doing this. In a past life, I was actually a tractor-trailer driver for 11 years. During that time, I had had a major surgery, and I wasn't able to work for a while, about 8-9 weeks. And during that time, I could use some light-duty things. So a friend of mine knew a lady who was actually in hospice care with cancer, and she asked me if I wanted to come in and help her. And so I did. It was something I could do while I was off from work. And it was so inspiring to be with someone in the dying process. And I know that sounds strange, but I thought, what an honor that I get to help this woman past through her life, the rest of her life, with dignity and comfort. And in any way she wanted to do that, it was completely her choice. So I really enjoyed that. And then in 2010, I lost my job. And I thought, well, I'm going to help with errand services or something like that until I take some college courses, because I wanted to do something other than drive a truck for the rest of my life. Not that that wasn't a great job.
Very commendable.
It was.
Yeah.
But, I was getting older between me and you. And so I opened up the company then, and it just morphed into senior care, because seniors end up needing the transportation, a lot of the companionship. Dementia care is a huge focus of our business. And then 9 months later, I had 9 employees.
Wow.
And almost 14 years later, we're up to 62 now.
Wow. Congratulations. What a
it
story.
Just grew, and thank you. It grew and grew. So it wasn't even an intention. But, tell God your plans, right?
I love stories like that, where you're kind of not even looking for that path, and then you stumble upon it, and suddenly you're discovering who you are and who you want to be in the next stage of life. Like, what a wonderful story.
And then all of the people that we've been able to help, and the stories we've been able to hear, and to allow people to make their own choices about how they want their life and those struggles to look like.
That's so important, because it's easy for me at my middle-aged age to think, that's, a long ways off, and I don't need to worry about that. But truthfully, like, I should be thinking about things like that, so that I know exactly what I'm going to do when that time comes. Or like you said, for friends and family, for my mom, for my family members who might be approaching that age and need some help. Like, what a wonderful option to be able to have. And when you're not even considering those things. It's sort of like when you're sick and you can't breathe, and suddenly you're like, all I want to do is breathe again, and I never realized how much I took it for granted. Like, that's kind of how this is, right? You didn't realize, like, buttoning your top of the tiny little buttons on your shirt, like, how hard that could be when you have arthritis or things like that.
Exactly. And, that kind of leads us into the conversation. So many people don't have that conversation until they needed the help yesterday.
Right.
And then their children are stuck with, okay, well, we never talked about this. Mm-hmm. What were your plans, And then so many people don't discuss the finances with their children, or who's going to pay for it, that kind of thing. And then it's really tough for everyone involved to then navigate that care. And we help every step of the way, but it's difficult because, mom and dad never needed help before. Right. So it's something none of us really think about.
Right. And the kids, certainly, we don't think about that.
No.
Our parents are pillars, right?
Yeah. Like, she's always taking care of me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now it's my turn. What do I do? Sheer panic. And luckily, I'm so glad that you're here to provide services to keep me from delving over the edge, because I wouldn't know where to start.
I'll help.
Perfect. So, talking about aging in place, we've listed a couple of examples, but are there more examples of what aging in place looks like?
Sure. So you can, of course, stay at home and age in place. There's assisted living facilities. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of great facilities here in the Valley. And some of those provide companionship. So occasionally we can get a client who it doesn't work very well for them to stay at home, because in times when we're not there, they're too isolated. Mm-hmm. They need community, and that's important. Or they've lost a spouse and definitely need community and support for a longer time period than they actually need home care for. That can be, a portion of that. Then you can have more nursing facilities if your level of care exceeds what home care or an assisted living facility can provide. And then memory care facilities are available also if you have a loved one suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And those are important to have on hand also.
Absolutely. My husband's grandmother went through that, and so it was a difficult process for the family to, of course, see that. But knowing that there was support staff to help her through that obviously makes it better for the family, reassuring.
Yes. And we do offer, stay at home, plans through end of life, with the support of home health and hospice. We, of course, couldn't do that all on our own, but then you're leading into 24/7 care.
Right. And I love that you mentioned the other options, because I know as much as I want to stay in my house forever and always, that might not always necessarily be the case. So I love that you're thinking outside the home as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really great.
You have to, because it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
So, one person may be able to afford to do that, and another person may not be able to afford to do that. And sometimes it's one of those things that we can extend. For example, you may need 4 hours of care and you're okay the rest of the day. And you don't have to move until you get to the point where it exceeds what you can afford and the, scope of care that you need.
Right. You mentioned, companionship and things like that. It kind of leads me back to the pandemic. I mean, that must have been a really tumultuous couple of years for Nexus and for you, trying to figure out how to balance all of these things while keeping people healthy and your clients, safe.
Yes, there was so much fear in that time, naturally, and so many people that weren't real sure of what an essential role was, for any worker. So we had clients that were afraid to have employees in their home. Then we had clients who had no choice. They wanted to stay at home. They were too terrified to go to a facility. A lot of facilities weren't accepting new patients at that time. And then the fear of having a caregiver come into your home. Are they bringing COVID to me? That kind of thing. So unfortunately, we had some people that went without care by their own choice because they were too frightened to allow anyone to come in. I think that was a countrywide thing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we had facilities that, didn't really know what to do. No one was really prepared for such a thing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So we were kind of learning as we went along. And, we did the best we could with isolation and pushing for vaccines when they became available. And then we also had to respect choice where that came into play. So it was a tough thing to navigate. And somehow we made it through.
Right.
Thank goodness.
What a heart you and your staff have. Because, to get through something like that, now it feels, yes, okay, we're on the other side of it, quote unquote. But,
yes.
You're still here and you're essential services, they couldn't go anywhere. People need your services.
Right, exactly.
Particularly in a time where we're not allowed to leave our house or go out and go to the grocery store and things like that. Wow.
Yeah. It was tough. I remember that first day they the government mandate said everyone needed to remain in place, and
what was your first thought that went through your head? Because of course, you're like, I can't do that. I've got people to help.
Right. And, I had caregivers calling, am I allowed to go this evening? Right. And I thought, well, you have to. This person's in their bed bound.
Right.
We can't just walk out on them. We're going to have to go.
Wow.
So I think we did a really good job at being able to pivot during that time. So we gathered anything we could. We had friends sewing face masks because we couldn't find any. We bought shields, scrubs, gloves, which we already had those, but, anything we could that could be protective for everyone. And then we were able to get our hands on a lot of PPE and, get everything covered as best we could.
You mentioned it takes a village. It sounds
like it really takes a village. And then there was a lot of education.
For everyone. Everyone. Especially in healthcare, I'm sure.
Yes. There was so much about COVID that we didn't know, and, you're wearing 2 masks and a face shield. You can't breathe. So you're wondering how you're going to get this,
Right.
So it was difficult on all sides and, but somehow we made it through.
Yeah. Well, that's such a wonderful thing to think about, to be able to get through and stand tall on the other side and know that you're here and you're still able to provide such important services. That's really wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So in thinking about, let's go back to our conversation, because that's me going off on a tangent because I'm so curious about how healthcare operated during such a time. But in terms of people who are approaching retirement, like my mom, or for other people who are thinking about aging in place, I'm curious about the advice that you'd give to people who are thinking about this. How we want our aging process to look is so important. And what does that mean to you to be able to provide those services and advice that you'd give to them?
So I would advise people to do a lot of things. So make an estate plan, find an attorney if you can, talk things over, a financial advisor if you can, talk things over on what your future can look like and ask some hard questions. What happens if I become, debilitated by something? How long can I stay in my home? What is the cost? Who helps to pay for that? And there are programs like aid and attendance with the VA if you were a service member during times of war. I can't remember all of the parameters of that.
I'm sure there's
right
a few
now.
rules
There's
to that.
a few rules to that. Are there any benefits in my long-term care insurance policy if I have one of those that can help pay for that?
I was curious about who pays for aging in place. It sounds like there's a lot of things to think about.
The majority of the cost is private pay. If you're low income, sometimes there's some help from Medicaid or Medicare services and that kind of thing, but that is per individual. You have to contact those insurance companies and ask if there's any help. Sometimes it's temporary, sometimes it's a little longer, but collectively making that plan. Okay, so this is what I have. What does this future look like? Do I have family members that can step in and help? Like with my grandmother, she had Alzheimer's, and my parents allowed her to move in with them. And they helped her through her life, So it can be a family member, it can be friends, it can be, churchgoers, again, the village. And sometimes that's in conjunction with a home care company. So we work a lot of times with families, where a family member will take Sundays or Wednesdays, and it keeps costs down, and it helps to also have a backup in case you're out of town. Let's say you take care of your mom 7 days a week someday, and she lives with you, but you're going on vacation, and you need someone to come in under respite care and just sit with her for a week while you're gone. We do that too. So it really doesn't look the same for anybody.
Yeah.
But setting down and making that plan and figuring out what would happen if you do need that kind of care is real important. And to be as descriptive as possible of what your wishes are. Make your advance directives, get detailed in that. I don't want to survive if this happens or that happens. Pick a hospice care if you want, and talk openly about that, because a lot of people think that's a nasty word.
I think it's so. My mom, she's talking about retirement, and we've had this conversation for, a couple of years now, and it's very difficult for me as her only daughter to have this conversation. I don't want to talk about it because it means that you're one step closer to the rest of your life.
Right.
And so now we've reached a point where I know we have to have that conversation, and I have to be a grown up and I have to do that. But it's so important. Like you said, the first step is just sort of figuring out your plan, what you hit it on the head, what you want your life to look like in retirement.
Yes.
I think that's so important, because some people might want to travel, and other people, they're okay staying home and staying in their bubble. But that's so interesting that you have so many options.
Right. I was at a convention last week, and it was a panel where it was a long-term care company had put it on, and it was a panel where 6 individuals who had just had care for their parents talked about what they had gone through, the quality of care issues, right down to hospice. And as I mentioned a second ago, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, hospice, absolutely not. We're not ready to die. It doesn't mean that.
Right. You could still be 20 years off from that.
Yeah, exactly. It means that you're being supported through something that's happened in your life, and you need that support. They're so very helpful, from anything from counseling to pain management to recovery. We have people who have graduated out of hospice, and that's an amazing thing, but being able to have those open conversations is so important. And on the panel, one lady talked about how her friend had built her house, and she had a room in it that she actually called her death and dying room.
Oh.
And we're all making the same face that you're making right now.
Sorry, if you're on YouTube, you're like, oh boy.
But she was totally open with the fact that, and completely understood that she wasn't going to live forever.
Right. This isn't a morbid conversation. I mean,
it wasn't morbid to her.
But that's important.
And she said, I want to see my garden. I want it to be, lots of windows. I love this tree. This is such a happy space for me.
Oh, see, it's beautiful when you...
That I want to die in this room. This is what I want to see. And she ended up being able to do that. And to have that positive way of thinking, and to be able to have that conversation, had she not shared that, no one in her family would have known that.
Yeah.
So that's very important. And I encourage people to have those hard conversations about what you want all of that to look like, because you may not always get to talk and tell someone those things.
Right.
And so don't wait till it's too late.
Right. But what a beautiful way to know that she's at peace and found peace, and knew that peace was going to be there for her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She got to live out her wishes.
Yeah.
And that's all any of us could hope for.
Yeah. You've talked about a bunch of benefits, but I'm curious about additional benefits of aging in place. Do you have a whole list of those?
Oh, I do. Yes. So, not that there's anything wrong with facilities. Of course, we have, as I said before, wonderful facilities in the Valley. But Aging in place at home looks like if you need care, you're going to have that one-on-one care. If you need something, your caregiver is right beside of you. They can provide that assistance immediately. Whereas a lot of times if you're in a facility, it can be kind of like a hospital. You're ringing a bell. You have to wait for someone to come. Again, that's not a bad thing. But if you would prefer to have that more immediate attention, it's one. Their only focus is you and not a floor of people, Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. But in that, you have a choice to continue to live in your home as you did before with a helper, with your independence. If you are still able to go out and have dinner, you can still do that. My very first patient, we went to dinner every day. I joked with everyone that he put 20 pounds on me, and it wasn't funny. I've lost it since, but I wasn't happy about that for a long time. But every day, him and his wife had always gone to dinner. He called it town. And they would go out and have dinner and talk, and always had to have dessert.
Well, I mean, come on.
Always.
Always.
Key lime pie, my kryptonite.
Oh, well, I should have been on these dinners. That's my favorite.
Yeah. And so it was about socialization for him.
Right.
And he wanted to get groceries every single day. And
I do not like the grocery store that much.
No, but it was part of his socialization.
Right.
Kroger down the street, yes, he wanted to spend a lot of time in there. So 4 hours every day
that's all
looked like errands and dinner. And I really think that prolonged his life to be able to continue to do that. And without me, he would not have been able to accomplish those things because he had lost his license due to dementia. Other people we've serviced have lost their license due to stroke or whatever, and then they're isolated at home waiting on a family member to take them out and go do something. We have clients who want to go on vacation, and they still get to do that. They get to play bridge every day if that's what they want to do with their caregiver.
You get to keep living your life.
You get to keep living your life
key.
Just as you did every day. And it's irritating at first, because you have this, shadow suddenly. You have this caregiver that's just like on top of you all the time. But then, the alternative of that is not being able to have that kind of independence and socialization and that kind of thing. So it's really a beautiful thing if you can continue to do that. I know I would want to do that.
Absolutely.
I would want to stay in my home and still do the things that I do every day for as long as I can.
Yeah. Oh, I make a bunch of morbid jokes about how I just want to be in my house until, the end. So.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be out in my jammy jams. First thing in the morning, walking my dogs, if I can. And if I can't, my shadow can help me with that.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing. And then also, I think you make such great friends with your caregiver. We do everything we can to make sure it's the right fit. And then they kind of become part of your family.
Love that. Oh, my gosh.
And you go from, oh, my gosh, this person is coming here every day and she doesn't put things back where I wanted them. The small things that just irritate everybody, to she's 5 minutes late. Where is she? She's caught in traffic. She's on her way, that kind of thing. And so then that person is someone you trust. And as you continue to decline, as some of us will always do, we'll always decline. Sometimes I feel like I declined a little from yesterday.
I could barely get out of bed this morning, so,
So as that decline happens, you're more comfortable allowing this person to do the personal things that you need done because you have that relationship with them, and it's not so hard, rather than to have strangers to do that for you.
Right.
And that's tough.
I was going to ask about the most rewarding part of this job for you, because you've listed so many beautiful things that I think that's the rewarding part. That's the rewarding part. And so you've just hit it again. Like, I feel like that's the most rewarding part.
It is.
You're not a person helping. You're part of their family now. You're friends with them.
Yes.
You need to be there to check on them because you love them and, they're important to you.
Right. They are. And, they're family members, who call, and me and my assistant administrator, we talk about this all the time, that we should have gotten a degree in counseling sometimes, because not only do we deal with the patient who is, emotionally dealing with their loss of function or illness or whatever, the family members are also dealing with that also. So we spend a lot of time talking about that with family members. And then along the way, you learn what might be coming down the pike. So
Right.
we can help them learn how to navigate what might be coming.
It sounds like it's, not to say that it's complicated, but there are certain facets of this that, you have to be very considerate of family members and things like that. So,
Oh, yes. And everyone's different.
right.
And you can have someone who's very open to those conversations, and then you can have someone who isn't.
Right.
And it's never going to happen, and my mom will be here forever.
Yeah.
That's
me, by the way. My mom's going to be here forever.
And of course, that's what we all want.
Right.
But we try to help them through that. And we've built some pretty good bonds over the years due to that.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the community. I mean, I can't imagine where a lot of people would be without that kind of service. And it's such a blessing to have you in our community doing those things for people and your staff.
Well, thank you. We feel very blessed to be able to offer the services.
Yeah. And I love that you love it. You clearly love it. It wasn't maybe what you always wanted to be when you grew up, but
it's
here
my
you are.
passion.
Yeah.
I do love it. Yes.
I love that. Listeners, you've learned more about aging in place in our very first episode of a retirement series, thanks to Nexus Homecare owner Tammy Mckee. Tammy, thank you so much for doing what you do, for giving us a deeper understanding of aging in place, and of course, the pivotal role that Nexus is playing in providing independent living during your retirement. Your dedication to enhancing the quality of life for individuals as they age is really remarkable. Thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You come back anytime. We got lots of retirement topics to talk about this year. So
Anytime.
Perfect. Thank you again so much for being on our show today. And please remember, listeners, this is just the beginning of our Retire VA series. For more engaging discussions on retirement living, please make sure to subscribe to our podcast for regular updates where you can stay informed, inspired, and equipped with all the valuable insights you need for your retirement planning. Thanks again to Nexus Homecare for sponsoring our very first episode of the Retirement series, and to Tammy Mckee for her time today. If you're curious to explore how Nexus Homecare can assist you or your loved ones with aging in place, you can learn more information and discover the possibilities of a comfortable and supported retirement lifestyle at www.mynexuscares.com.